Hello, hello. Welcome to the place for offbeat health professionals who have bravely swapped their healthcare hats for non-clinical creative caps. I'm Caitlin, a psychologist turned copywriter, and this is Healers with Hustles. All right, healers. Now, without sounding like a cheesy late night commercial, how many of these ring true? Do you stress over minor mistakes or imperfections in your work? Do you believe your success is due to luck or external influences? Are you highly sensitive to constructive criticism? Do you feel like it's only a matter of time before you're exposed as a fraud? Do you undervalue your own expertise, even in areas where you're genuinely more skilled than others? If you nodded your head along to a few of those, you probably guessed that you may have experienced imposter syndrome, or I prefer the term phenomenon, if I can say that word, because syndrome indicates that there's something wrong, whereas imposter phenomenon, it's so common. Pretty much everybody's experienced it, or about 70% of people experience it. So it's quite common. So basically, it's that feeling of being found out even when you have the credentials or experiences. And I wanted to chat a bit about that today and maybe shine a little bit of a light and explore what's really going on. So the term was actually coined back in the 70s by a few researchers, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And they noticed that many high achieving women felt like their success was due to luck or charm, but not their own abilities. But the thing is, it's not just women who experience this. Recent research shows that everybody experiences it. And researchers identified many common traits linked to imposter phenomenon, such as neuroticism, lower self-esteem, and perfectionism. There's also some older research showing that introversion is potentially linked to the imposter phenomenon as well. And in more recent research, there's an indication that extroversion is negatively correlated with imposter phenomenon, meaning that the higher someone's extroversion, the lower their feelings of imposter syndrome. What is it like to experience the imposter phenomenon? So basically, there's an ever-present baggage of self-doubt, but people are always worried that someone will see through the facade. Well, let's have a bit of a chat about why people might feel this way or what's going on. Now, being a psychodynamic therapist, I can't help but think of it as in the context of maybe like a defense mechanism where the phenomenon is actually protecting an individual from even deeper feelings of inadequacy or even fear of success. So by maintaining a belief in someone's own fraudulence or they're going to get found out, it's a bit of a paradox, right? The phenomenon actually shields someone from that anxiety of truly owning their achievements, but even the responsibilities that come with those achievements. Now, of course, early childhood experiences can also contribute to it. So, for instance, children who've received praise only for achievements rather than effort may develop that fragile sense of self-worth that's tied exclusively to what they do rather than who they are. And so really those early experiences can potentially lead to, shame and contribute to the development of, imposter syndrome. And of course, family dynamics could even play a huge part. So it could be as a result of trying to gain self-esteem by living up to an idealized image. Interestingly, there's some research, though, that people with imposter phenomenon often have a okay self-esteem in general, but they struggle specifically in areas of achievement. So some people with imposter phenomenon are driven by like performance goals and wanting to look smart rather than actually learn and grow, which of course would lead to anxiety and stress. And their self-worth is tied to that external validation, like I said before, can lead to shame. Now, in the psychoanalytic literature, there's a concept called the as-if personality, which basically describes people who act in a way they believe others expect rather than from their true self. So people who have basically played a role their whole life and constantly adjusted their behavior to fit what they thought was accepted or admired rather than acting from a place of what they wanted. And when I think about it, a lot of that in terms of like the as if personality or concept was definitely mirrored in my experience in masters, where I felt like I had to act as if I was a psychologist, like even though I was one, right? And that led me to behave in a certain way that was against my values or the way that I wanted to show up as a therapist or the type of therapist that I personally wanted to be. I was acting like other people in my year or doing things that I assumed would make me look like a good psychologist rather than doing something that came from a place of authenticity or being genuine. And so, of course, I experienced like ridiculous amount of self-doubt or feelings like I was an imposter because I was one. And it's a really tough way to live, such a tough way to live. And so where does that leave us? So interestingly, there's a concept called self-efficacy, and basically self-efficacy is the belief in one's own ability to succeed. And there's research showing that imposter phenomenon is negatively correlated with self-efficacy, which basically means that the higher our imposter phenomenon is, the lower our self-efficacy is, or vice versa. The higher our self-efficacy is, the lower our feelings of being an imposter are. So building self-efficacy, or that feeling that we can achieve something, can be a really powerful antidote to imposter feelings, because it really involves recognizing and trusting in your own capabilities. So if we believe in our ability to succeed, we're more likely to take on new challenges and really persist in the face of setbacks, and also maybe not tie what we do to our self-worth. Interestingly, talking to people on this podcast and interviewing guests, it's one of the common threads throughout the conversations. So people talk often about starting a business and doing something so wild, they never thought they would be able to do that. And it's that sense of, I can do it, I can achieve it. And then that's had effects in their other domains of life where they felt like they have a bit more confidence and maybe have less feelings of imposter syndrome because they have been able to achieve really big goals in other areas of their life. So, I guess, listener, where does this leave us? Like, are we stuck with this icky feeling forever? Are we doomed to do power poses in bathroom stalls and giving us pep talks in the mirrors for the rest of our lives? Well, I'm sure you're probably wondering, what can I do? And as a therapist, my answer is always understand yourself, which I'm sure is probably not the answer you were hoping I would say. I'm sure you're hoping for me to give you a quick 7 steps to eradicate imposter syndrome forever. But no, that's not exactly how it works. But I think what can be helpful is to have that self-compassion and recognize that it's really, really common. And it's also really common for people to think that we're somehow different. We're the exception to the norm. Like everybody else is doing this over here, but for some reason we're the one person that's different. But also, I know it's a bit uncomfortable, but even maybe leaning into the feeling of imposter syndrome or phenomenon. So leaning into that feeling, like, what is that feeling actually telling you? Because there might be something in there. There might be some truth in there, not necessarily about you as a person, but maybe you don't have enough support. Maybe you haven't yet got a lot of experience in what you're doing, or maybe what you're doing is actually out of alignment with your values and who you are and who you want to be. And so rather than pushing that feeling away and trying to cover it up and, telling yourself positive mantras or self-affirmations or whatever, actually listening to that feeling and leaning into it. And that's where therapy can be super helpful. I might be biased, but so really, I think any emotion is like basically little internal messages that are trying to communicate something to us that isn't right or something that needs to be explored. So maybe next time you feel that way, take a little moment to pause and reflect and ask yourself what the feeling is really about. What's it trying to tell you? Are you afraid of failing or being rejected? Or is it just something that you haven't done before, and so it makes sense that you're feeling like a little bit of a fraud? Or is it maybe in certain situations or with certain people even that you feel a sense of feeling like an imposter or a fraud? And that's interesting too, maybe teasing things out about that. Because once we've teased out the layers or peeled back the layers, we can isolate them and work out which one, or they might even be multiple of them, are the culprits. And then when you understand the root cause of a feeling, you can address the underlying problem. I also think something that's wildly underrated is surrounding yourself by supportive people. And I don't mean people who are just like, whoa, 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 you're the best. I mean people who are honest and share their struggles. So you can also have a sense of that it's okay if you're struggling as well. Yeah, and I think really when it comes down to it, what matters the most is keep showing up and keep doing what you love. All right. That's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Healers with Hustles. If you've enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a tiny favor and subscribe to the show? Just tap the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, and you'll be the first to know as soon as a new episode drops. Thanks so much for listening. Okay, ta-ta for now.